I think it's started recording now.
Great. So thank you all. Today we'll be presenting New Year, New Revit, implementing the new features of Revit 2022. Oops, there we go. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sal DiPietro. I'm a licensed engineer, structural engineer for Springpoint Structural, and I also work for our sister company, Fox & Associates. I'm also a Autodesk certified professional in Revit structure, and I'm co-presenting with Sid, and he can introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Sidney Griffin. Bethany gave a nice introduction of me already, but just to let anyone who may be new to the presentation, I am the BIM project manager for University of Virginia Facilities Management. I work within the Geospatial Engineering Services Department, and I come from VMDO. I've had many years of experience there working with Bethany, but I'm over here on the owner side looking to shake things up and give your BIM models a place to thrive after construction.
So this presentation is a collaboration between the Charlottesville Revit User Group and the Richmond Young Architects Forum. So the Cville Rug is a collaborative group of BIM enthusiasts working with Autodesk Revit. Our mission is to promote industry knowledge through sharing tips, best practices, and new technology with the local AEC community. And we're able to do so through Imaginative Technologies. So YAP RVA is a subcommittee of AIA Richmond consisting of emerging professionals. YAP RVA's mission is to provide an environment that promotes collaboration and growth through mentorship, networking, and development opportunities. And I said this before, but a lot of our mission statement values are quite aligned. And we felt that this was a great opportunity to collaborate and provide the Virginia design community a learning presentation. So I know a lot of you are joining to get some AIA learning credits. If you haven't seen the link that was posted in the Teams chat, you can scan this QR code and enter in your name, AIA number, course number, and date. This will help us verify your attendance for this presentation and track that. If you can as well, there's another sign-in sheet just for the Charlottesville Revit user group in the Microsoft Teams chat. If you can fill that out, that would be fantastic and really help us out. So I'll leave this up for a second just to make sure that everyone can sign in for the AIA learning credit. Okay, so why Revit 2022? Usually with these sort of annual updates, you know, the changes are very incremental. You might not even notice some of the changes because your workflow really isn't disrupted too much. But Revit 2022 is a little bit different. So on Autodesk.com, there are forums, and there's one particular forum called Revit Ideas. And Revit is claiming that over 8,000 votes within Revit Ideas has contributed to this update. So Revit Ideas is a place for users across the globe that can post ideas that they want implemented in future iterations of Revit. So this makes Revit 2022 a really different update compared to the other ones. Well, we felt that a lot of the new features had an effect on your Office template and also your user workflow. So we wanted to highlight this throughout the presentation. So in the corner of each slide, you'll either see this file or this desk symbol, and that will indicate whether it has an effect on your Office's template or your user workflow and how you might approach to modeling something. So we grouped all the new features into 6 different groups. We have model enhancements, efficiency enhancements, annotation, visibility graphics, schedule enhancements, and import-export improvements. But before I do so, I want to just talk about some Revit fundamentals that will help inform the presentation. So there's a sort of Revit file hierarchy. At the top, you'll have your template file and your project file. So if I were to go to create a new project, I would use my Office template, which will have all our Office standards and settings, and then I can use that to create a new project file. So you really have to view a project file as kind of the building enclosure. It's not only housing all the 3D modeled elements, but it's housing your text, your annotations, your schedule. Everything is going to fall under this project file umbrella. Next two levels are family and family category. So any Revit element belongs to a family and thus belongs to a family category. Family categories are predefined and they're built within Revit. We cannot change these. These are something that Revit takes ownership over. And then, of course, the next level is a family type. So a family can contain one or more family types, each with user-defined settings and parameters. So if I were to walk you through an example, say I wanted to model a structural concrete column. First, I would need a project file. So I'd go and I'd use our Springpoint template file and I'd create a new project file. So I'm just calling it building. I would then use a concrete column family, which falls under the structural columns family category. Again, this is predefined and built within Revit. From there, you can have multiple different types of that column. So I want to model this 14 by 14, but it could be 12 by 12 or 12 by 16. You can have many types of that concrete column, and you do so through, you differentiate between the different types through parameters. So what are parameters? Parameters are values used to define and modify elements. So it could be a length or a text value or a material. It's values that are associated with a specific element. Parameters also help communicate model information through tags and schedules. Revit has 4 different types of parameters. I'm not going to go deep into what each one entails, but what you need to know is that project and global parameters are associated with the template file or the project file. Family parameters are specific to family files, and shared parameters are can be shared across all 3 types of files. The next thing that I want to talk about is the graphics hierarchy. At the top of this hierarchy is object styles. These set the global graphics for any element as the default in your views. Usually this is set in your Office's Revit template file, and it's managed by your Office's BIM manager. And for example, if we return to that structural concrete column example, we set the line weight to 3. This will be the default in any view. The next level of hierarchy here is phases. So you're going to associate a modeled element in Revit to a phase, whether it's existing, new construction, or it's to be demolished. Of course, you can create your own custom ones as well. So this phases allows you to change the graphics for how it looks for that phase. For example, if I want an existing concrete column, I want that to show up gray, so you know it's existing, and it also differentiates from the new scope of work. If it's demolished, I want it to have a demolished line pattern as well. The next level is view templates and visibility graphics overrides. So it's likely that your Office template file has some built-in view templates. Here you can further refine how you want it to look in those plans. So we might want a floor plan view template where the structural concrete columns pop a little bit more. So we'll override the object style default and increase the line weight to, say, 4. The final level is override graphics in view. So you can right-click any model element in Revit and select override graphics in view and change the graphics display to whatever you want it to be. Here, I'm doing something really dramatic and I'm just changing everything to red. Okay, now let's talk about some of the new features, and especially with model enhancements. So there are a ton of new model categories within Revit 2022. We have food service equipment, medical equipment, fire protection, audiovisual devices, signage, hardscape, and temporary structures. So a lot of these new model categories, your current workflow is likely modeling them as generic models. For example, if I wanted to model some kitchen equipment, say this burner that I show up on this slide right now, it's a generic model. Is you're likely using generic models to model a variety of things within your building. I have a lot of clients that use it for gutters and door trim. And if you want to separate out the information, you have to do so through generic model tags, shared parameters, schedule filters. But now with these new model categories, if you wanted to separate out the information for food service equipment, it has its own category now. And that way you can also have its own food service equipment tag, its own food service equipment schedules, and you no longer need to use shared parameters and schedule filters to separate out that information in the model. Of course, you can still use them if you wanted to and refine it further, but it's no longer necessary as it was before. With new model categories means we have to make some graphics updates to our Office template file. I mentioned on the previous slide about object styles, the highest level of that graphics hierarchy that sets the default. Here we need to adjust for that in our Office template. So your Office BIM manager will have to go up to the Manage tab, go to Object Styles, and then under the Model Objects tab, you can set the line weight, color, and pattern for each one of those new model categories. The next graphics level that we talked about was plan, elevation, and detail view templates. So if you had those pre-built into your Office's template file, you're going to want to go ahead and adjust those as well. So look for those new model categories and do any more overrides on how you want that to look in your plan views and your detail view templates. The third thing that we need to be aware of or change is how these new model categories look in our Revit links. So as a structural engineer, we're always linking in an architectural model and a mechanical model, and we always customize the display settings. So we'll go through and we'll change all the line weights of the architectural model to a line weight of 1, so it doesn't affect how our model looks in our plans. So if you have any sort of placeholders that are set in your template, or just be generally aware that you have to change the settings for these new model categories. So this is a really cool new feature. You can now see grids in 3D. You can actually select them and see the plane that it intersects. If you're in a 3D view and you don't see grids, you can simply go to the visibility graphic overrides or type in VG. There you can navigate up to the annotation categories tab and just make sure that grid is checked so it's visible in that 3D view. So grid lines can also, in 3D views, can also be assigned to different floor levels. To do so, you go up to the Properties palette. So here I'm just showing how to select a grid. You go over to the Properties palette, and then there's a new line that says Show Grids. And then you check the boxes for the levels that you want it to show. And you can have it on 1 or more levels if you wanted to. So Revit 2022 has introduced tapered walls. Tapered walls are a great new feature, especially if you're modeling a landscape retaining wall or you're modeling a existing masonry pilaster. And so to do so, to model a tapered wall, there is a parameter called cross-section definition under the whenever you select a wall. And there are three options under this. You have vertical, slanted, and tapered. If I were to go and just select any wall type that I had already built into the model, I wouldn't be able to select tapered. And the reason for this is that tapered walls require the structural material to be set to variable. So my workflow on a tapered wall would be to duplicate a wall type and just create a new sort of variable version of that. So here I'm naming it 9-inch brick with variable in parentheses after. You then go into edit structure and just make sure that variable is checked so we can create a tapered wall. So you can actually model tapered walls in two ways. The first one is from the properties palette itself, which I showed you on the previous slide. So in that dropdown, we would select tapered, and then three new parameters would show up: enable angle overrides, exterior angle, and interior angle. And I'll show you how to do so. So we just select that variable wall type here, and then we navigate over to the properties palette, and we just make sure that's checked and just enter in the angle values that you would like. So tapered walls can also be modeled from the type properties itself. You can have a default exterior and interior angle, and this will give you the same values or the same tapered wall as the previous slide. So you can now edit profiles on slanted walls. So I think slanted walls were either introduced in Revit 2020 or 2021. However, you were previously restricted. You couldn't edit the profile of that wall as you could a vertical wall. And now you're able to do so. So if you have any sort of odd opening in a slanted wall or a corner condition like I'm showing on this slide, you can edit that outline. So Revit 2022 has brought some great new efficiency enhancements that will really improve your workflow. The first being there's this new feature called snap to middle between 2 points. So whenever you're in a sort of draw tool setting, you can right click and select snap overrides. And then you can select snap mid between 2 points and select 2 points. And you can immediately start drawing. So this is a cool new feature. Your current workflow to do something like this might be to draw a line and then snap to the middle between these two, but this gives you another option. This one's a big one for me. You can automatically lock and align. So I use the align and lock tool a lot, especially with slab outlines. So I'll, when I'm drawing the perimeter of a floor slab, I'll align and lock it to the interior face of a wall. That way, as you're, throughout the design process, if you're moving walls, the slab will move with it. But when you're doing so, you have to hit the little lock icon when you align. Now you can do it automatically. So from the align tool or using AL, you can just hit this little lock icon at the ribbon panel, select your reference line, and then select the elements align tool. And you'll see that little lock is already locked, so you know it's automatic, which is a really great time-saving tool. So I believe in Revit 2021, Autodesk started moving your out-of-the-box content family away from being downloaded on your C drive and on your actual computer, and has moved it towards the cloud. So they've added this sort of load Autodesk family icon. And what's great about this is you can now load multiple families at the same time. So to do so, navigate to the Insert tab and select Load Autodesk Family. And then from there, you can navigate through the family tree and select as many families as you want, and then load them in. So you now can duplicate sheets. I think this is a fantastic tool, especially in that initial setup when you're creating a new project. To do this, you simply click on it, right-click on a sheet in the project browser, select Duplicate Sheet, and then there'll be 3 new options for you. You can duplicate an empty sheet, duplicate with sheet detailing, and duplicate with views. What's really great about this is if you're creating a lot of like floor plan sheets, and you can copy over a lot of that instance parameter sort of information where it's like authored by or the sheet issue date. So that will all come over. So this is a great time-saving tool. This is a great new feature for large projects that you have, where you have lots of views, lots of sheets. You can now search in the project browser. To do so, right-click anywhere in the project browser itself and select Search. And then from there, you can type in a keyword and use the Next and Previous buttons to navigate through the entire project browser. So if you're a user who likes to modify families or create a lot of new families, this will save you a lot of time. You can now duplicate family parameters. So with this example, we're operating from that .rfa file. We're from an actual family file here. To do so, navigate up to family types, and then select the parameter that you'd like to duplicate, and then select that new duplicate parameter icon at the bottom, type in the new parameter name, and then you can edit the parameter further as needed. So this comes in, it's a great tool when you're duplicating or you need a lot of dimension parameters. So you don't have to go back and select, lengths for each type of parameter. You can simply duplicate it, and it saves a ton of time. So select all instance enhancements. You're probably familiar with this feature. You can right-click on a modeled element in Revit and then select all instances in a view or through the entire project. But before, it was actually limited to a certain number of model categories, and Revit has expanded that to all the model categories that are shown on this slide. So now architects can select all the rooms and spaces and change any parameters as a group from there as well. So that's a great new feature. Another interesting feature about select all instances is now you can select 2 or more different categories. So in this example, I'm going to be selecting a detail line, and I'm also going to be selecting a text annotation. And I can right-click, select all instances, and then now I have 29 selected there. So really interesting new feature. Okay, so just a little download on materials. Materials are comprised of different assets. You can have graphics, thermal, appearance, and physical. And these material assets can be shared amongst other materials. Like they're not exclusive to a material in Revit. And your current duplicating material workflow is that you have to duplicate the material, but it likely duplicates the asset as well. So for example, if I had a concrete material and I wanted to duplicate it for a lightweight version of it, I would still want the appearance asset to still look like concrete. So if I duplicated this, it would duplicate both the material and the appearance asset. But now there's a new feature where you can duplicate using shared asset, where the duplicate and the source material share a common asset. So if I were to go and duplicate with this approach using shared assets, it would no longer make a duplicate of that appearance asset. And this is important because you don't want unnecessary or redundant assets in your material library, because that doesn't give you the fine control over your information that's held in your BIM model. The Revit added a ton of new search bars just for some efficiency and time-saving use. I'll go through these pretty quickly. There's a new search bar at the top of schedule and quantity that allows you to search for model categories. Same with material takeoffs. Parameters, you can now search for parameters. So if you have a really complex detailed component or family, you can easily search for parameters at the top. Same with loaded tags and symbols. They have that new category search bar. Object styles has it as well. Oops. There we go. Object styles. And so does visibility graphic overrides. What's nice about this one is that you can search for subcategories in that search bar. And lastly, modified DWG exports. There's another new category search bar at the top. This is a big one. This has been a big complaint for our Revit users for a while. If you have any sort of call-out view, whether it's an enlarged plan or an enlarged detail from say a building section, if you ever deleted that parent view, you would also lose the call-out views that were sourced with inside it. Now you can make it independent by selecting parent view in the properties palette and changing that value to none. This will make it independent. And what's also nice is that if you didn't do so and you deleted that parent view, Revit will now have a fail-safe and have a pop-up dialog box that will prompt you to make any callouts independent when you're deleting that parent view. Okay, I'm gonna pass it over to Sid, and he's gonna talk about annotation enhancements.
Okay.
I'll share my screen.
Brief intermission here while I get my screen shared. How is this going to work? Let's see. Okay. So let's talk about some annotation enhancements, and thank you, Sal, for bringing those features up, because I'm going to be referencing some of those in these next few slides. First, one of the big gripes that we've had when we are trying to lay out our plans is that we don't have enough real estate for all of the tags that we are now creating. And one of the workarounds that we had been using at one point was to create two tags and lay them on top of each other so that we didn't have to take up more real estate than necessary. Well, now Autodesk has given us the ability to create multiple leaders for the same tag. And the steps are pretty simple. You just go up to your Add Remove Host button and your ribbon and select your next element. And as long as those two have the same parameter information, the tag will stay the same and you'll have two leaders. Now, of course, you're going to ask, what happens when these leaders have something that is different? Not the leaders, but the things that are being touched. Well, that invokes the use of a new feature for this particular feature of tags, is the multiple values indication. And what this is going to give you the opportunity to do is to either by default present what is given to us as the open caret varies close caret. It is in lowercase. I don't know why. That'll be one of the first things I'm going to add as a affix, or you can add some new custom text that will make more sense for your drawings. I will tell you that this multiple values indicator is going to be used anywhere where two values can't be reconciled. So think about your schedules, your instance parameters view. When those say varies right now, if you change the value here to say, I have no idea, it's going to say, I have no idea in your instance parameters. And as a bonus tip, if you need to clean up your data and get those two elements to have the same value, we can simply select the multiple values indication item and change the value, and it will update the information on both of those components. Another nice new feature for the multiple leaders is the ability to include a count within the tag information. Now, this is going to be a type update. So your BIM manager or your project coordinator will need to work on this, and that's the reason why we have the symbol up there for a template update. In order to make this feature available, we'll need to edit the label and select multi-leader tag in the properties here, which will give us the ability to select the host count, and we're going to add that to our tag to allow it to be visible. So again, it'll be a different type. Okay. If you are from the Zaha Hadid office or Daniel Leafskin, you're going to love this feature. We now have the ability to tag our curtain wall mullions. Before, we had to use workarounds that might have been a little messy with keynotes or material tags, but now we have a fully dedicated tag for the curtain wall mullion. Currently, there is not a template for this tag. So in order to create one, we'll need to create a tag of another type or of another parameter category and change over the category to the mullion tag. Okay, so to report some category agnostic information, multi-category tags have been expanded to be able to be tagged on more categories within our Revit models. This can really reduce the number of tags if you start to shift your organization to using more multi-category tags to pull information out, like your descriptions, your type comments, your marks, all of that through the multi-category tag, rather than creating a multitude of category-specific tags. And an additional feature to this is that the multi-category tag is now available in the dialog for tag all not tagged. So you can really quickly increase the efficiency of tagging using these features. So tags can now be rotated so that they are better visible in our views. This is I believe it's a built-in parameter for tags. So they have put this in with our instance parameters. So each instance has the ability to have its own angle. And you'll see in this demonstration that it's just a matter of selecting the angle and providing a value. Us architects have been waiting for this one for a long time. We finally have the ability to put spot slopes on ramps, like we already should have been able to do. So these spot slopes can now be visible in plans and elevations and sections and 3D views. Okay, so working with some of the current projects at VMDO, there have been many times when the timeline of a project requires things to be identified for change while other things are still happening. Autodesk has given us the ability to kind of make some separation between all of the different revision types that we might need to document in our drawing sets. We now have a custom revision sequence that we can invoke to identify, say, RFIs instead of change orders, or general revisions from an ASI. The steps are pretty simple. Under the View tab, we will select Revisions. Within that dialog, where we used to have two selections for alphanumeric and numeric, now have a button here for customized numbering. And selecting that, we'll get a dialog box with a list of all of our revision types. And we can select a button for a new revision scheme. After selecting that button, we have a dialog that comes in, and we are now able to enter a name for that new revision scheme and create some settings for how we want that to appear, giving some prefixes, some suffixes, and we can also identify how many digits we want that revision to include. Back in our sheet Issues and Revisions, it is easy as selecting from a dropdown which scheme we want to use for this particular revision. Okay, so for dimension strings, we now have an ability to create a type for specific prefixes and suffixes so that we are not going back and re-adding in verify in field for all of the existing dimensions in an existing building, or just having the plus minus symbol would be available in this feature. By creating a type and identifying what the dimension suffix and prefixes are, that suffix or prefix will now be always available in that particular dimension type. Here's the steps. Duplicating the type from a typical dimension style. Enter those values, and it's easy as that. Okay, let's move into visibility graphic enhancements. So let's say you have a layout view and you would like to clean up the visibility of that layout view so that we have just the core. That might be the most important part of the wall construction that we need to convey to the contractor to tell them where to put the wall. Of course, walls are created with many layers of information, from the finish on the exterior all the way to the finish on the interior. In that definition, we're going to have a plane or a couple of planes that define what the core is. So any layers that are in that core, those are going to be visible when this feature is invoked. To bring up that hidden non-core feature, it's going to be going through visibility graphics. We're going to come down to our walls and uncheck the non-core layers, and voila, our walls are cleaned up. Some things to mention about this tool that I've found as I was playing with it. The wall lines that you see right now, they will still not be automatically selected when you're using dimension strings, unless you use the dimension style for core, center line, or edge of core. With the non-core lines not showing, your edge of wall dimension features will not work. And another small feature or caveat to this particular tool, walls in previous phases are not going to respect this setting. So they will still be showing their non-core layers. A fun little one here. We now have a new default color scheme that's much more subdued, more pastel, and not as garish as it used to be. So for those that really like to tweak their plans for pretty colors, this might be happiness for you. Okay. I was really excited about this one, and in Revit 2022, we now have the ability to be more adventurous with our overrides for phasing. In previous versions, our phasing overrides were pretty hard coded in where they were in time. Your graphic overrides for phases were locked into the phase state across the entire project. Now we can call on phases to apply the overrides through filters and through the visibility graphics control. This will give the users much greater control over the graphic qualities of existing information. But what I was really excited about is the ability to use this feature as a way for us to show demolition drawings in a much more intuitive way. Before, demolition plans required an overlay of two different views. At least that's the workout around that we've used. An overlay of two different views, one that had the graphic information and the other that had the room names. Because demolition is an action that happens in the new construction phase, that means that the rooms that were being displayed in the demolition plan were new construction rooms. Now, what we can do is create existing floor plans for demolition drawings, and we can use this filter to find not just walls, but any elements within this plan that are going to be demolished in a future phase or any phase we select. After we've created that filter, we can then graphically override that to match our demolition graphic overrides. So great new workflow for demolition drawings. Let's go through some schedule enhancements. We can now split schedules across sheets very easily. This feature gives us the ability to, let's go to, oh, no. There we go. Gives us the ability to select which sheets that new schedule is going to show on, and we have some choices on how much of the schedule is going to be shown in each sheet. We can split them evenly or customize a dimension. And once those schedules are split across sheets, we still have the ability to drag the content to customize it for the layout of that sheet. If all of the values are pulled over to the other sheets, you see on the right here how the schedules will kind of self-correct themselves. All right. So when we're creating schedules, you've probably experienced the multitude of parameters you have to scan through in order to find the parameter that you want to bring over. So Autodesk has given us a few filters to be able to find things more quickly. So we can now filter this list. Turn on my laser pointer. We can now filter this list by additional filters looking at the parameter type. Parameter type being a built-in parameter, a project parameter, or a shared parameter. We can look at the value type, the discipline, or whether or not it's a type or instance parameter. And this is also showing that search feature that Sal presented earlier. We can quickly search for the feature, the parameter that we are looking for, and add it to our schedule. Oh, actually, this slide is about a part that is really important for anyone who's been working with schedules. We can now include family type and family and type in the filters for a schedule. So that is huge for those categories that have a lot of scope in them, a lot of different features, and you want to narrow down the scope of the schedule to a particular element in the model. And lastly, for filtering, we can also filter by work set. That work set has to be included in the list of fields for the schedule to be able to use it as a filter. All right, another big one. So shared parameters can now be included in key schedules so that we can now more quickly apply values to elements within the model. So a little bit of background for those that may not know. The difference between schedules and key schedules. So a schedule is going to be the tabulated version of all of the elements that you have in your model. Of course, filtered by way of however you want your schedule to look. So we're just going to use this simplified version of a door schedule for an example. A key schedule is defined presets, or is going to allow us to define presets for sets of parameters within an element. A key is going to automate the ability to apply these presets. So for example, we have a door hardware key schedule where we have keys A, B, and C, and they are going to predetermine what the hardware set is, what the door material is, and what the frame material might be. Before, if we had information that we also wanted to include in a tag, and if we needed to include that information in the tag, that information needed to be in a container that both the family and the project understood. So that is the reason for shared parameters. It's a way of having information that is presented to both the family and the project so that they both understand each other and can report the information respectively. Before, we couldn't do things like include a fire rating, where that fire rating is also part of the tag for that door. But now we have the ability to include a shared parameter in our door, in our key schedule, so that it can feed information into our schedule and tags. All right. A small feature is the ability to export our schedules to CSV format. Before we only had the TXT format, but now we have native CSV export, comma separated values. And we have an expanded category list for multi-category schedules and material takeoff schedules. We've come across problems with this in the past where we tried to do material takeoffs for cost analysis, and there simply weren't ways for us to extract information for wall sweeps, for base molding, or for roof soffits. We had to do other things to trick Revit into doing what we wanted it to do. Now we can probably undo some of those workarounds and actually use the new expanded list of schedule subcategories. Okay, now to our last section, the import and export enhancements. We finally have a native export tool for PDFs. Before we had to rely on either our Bluebeam drivers or our Adobe Acrobat drivers. Now we have the ability to print directly to PDF with tools from Autodesk. Now this is not a printing, this is an export. So there's a distinction in where you look for this tool. You have to come to the File tab and come to Export and select PDF. And from there, it's very similar to the way that we we put information in for creating a print. You see on the right here, actually, this is the slide that doesn't. We have the ability to select the views of the sheets. We tell it where the file name is and where to save it. We tell it what size the sheet is and what zooming we want, and even the orientation. And you just click export. Now I was playing with this feature while getting ready for this presentation, and I noticed this little icon right here. I was like, what is that? And I don't know why this is not being celebrated more, but it is a custom naming setup for your sheets. I have been looking for this for a very long time. I am so happy to see it now, and I'm going to be using it a lot. I'm also interested in how this is going to be implemented in some of our automation tools. Matt, talking about clarity now, to be able to create custom naming for sheets. Okay, getting into the smaller stuff here. With our CAD imports, we can now select which level those imports go to. We had that ability with CAD links, but now we have it with imports. Rhino models can now be linked, not just imported like we were having to do before. And this may be helpful for any offices that might be doing conceptual work in Rhino. We may be able to now be able to work simultaneously in the two platforms and have things talk between each other. We now, okay, in 2021, we have been given the ability to export to STL files to support 3D printing. And now Revit 22 has given us the ability to import STLs. I'm not really sure how the STL import is going to work because the information that comes in is really dumb. It's not going to be able to be parametric. It's not going to be able to hold data. It's just going to be there. But the more interesting thing that is on the slide is the ability to import and export the OBJ file format. And that brings us to our last feature. The OBJ export has support in PowerPoint. So we can now present natively in PowerPoint our 3D forms. Coming out of Revit, we're going to use the workflow of, come on, let's go. Come on. Try it now. There we go. Opening the 3D view, we're going to select the File tab and Export. We're going to go to CAD formats and select the OBJ export file type. You get to select which detail level we want and save the OBJ file. On the PowerPoint side, it is as easy as going to the Insert tab, selecting 3D models, and selecting things from this device. And that's it. Once we have the OBJ file in Excel, in PowerPoint, I'm sorry, we now have the ability to apply some animations to it. We have zoom in, turntable, a swing feature, a jump and turn. We'll see the jump and turn. Whee! And the leave. These are canned 3D animations. And I'm sure Microsoft will develop more as soon as we ask them to. But at least we can natively present that information in a format that we are used to presenting our work. So that was the list. If you have questions for either Sal or me, please ask them. And also put up here the AIA Learning Credits QR code in case anyone needs it.
We did have a couple things come in on the chat.
Oh, great. I can't see the chat, unfortunately. So
Yeah, I figured, and it was better to wait till the end anyway. And I tried to answer. No, it's all good. You guys had a great flow going. So thank you so much. It's very obvious that a lot of work went into this presentation, and you guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I give Sal much of the credit. He worked very hard on this for very long. Thank you for getting this together for us.
Yes, I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you, Sal.
Looks like John had a question. If you can add your own families to the cloud, the family cloud, I don't think you can. I think it's reserved for out-of-the-box families provided by Revit. Although that would be fantastic if you could store your families in a sort of cloud-based kind of BIM 360 platform and just be able to search that way.
I found 2 Revit ideas where people have submitted that as a Revit idea, and I put that in the chat. So if you guys, hopefully everyone knows about Revit ideas, but it's where basically they will look at these to create the roadmap that Sal was talking about at the very beginning, where that's how they decide what new features to put into these new versions of Revit. So if you vote these ideas up, the developers of Autodesk will take that into consideration and work on the ones that get the most votes. So if we want that kind of cloud storage, which I do think would be a great idea, we need to vote these ideas up.
Yeah, and that's what they said is their claim to fame for this update, is that it was mostly from Revit ideas generated by people like you and I use every day. So the next big Revit ideas update, you never know when it's going to come. So if you really upvote that stuff, it might actually get implemented.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any other questions, but I did want to just comment on that like super cool last slide. Is like I think it's great if you're giving sort of a conceptual presentation and you can have that floor plan in 3D and like just like have it rotate on a turntable. I think that's a really cool feature that you can start implementing in your presentation PowerPoints to clients.
Robert did have a comment about OBJ being a file format that he can export from Drone Deploy.
Yeah, so if anyone either in-house or excuse me, or using an outside resource does drone flights, there's a couple of major programs that are used, such as Drone Deploy and Pix4D, both of which will have a very limited number of exports, none of which before would go directly into Revit easily, other than a point cloud, which, yeah, that's system killing. So it's really nice to have an OBJ format that we might be able to pull from drone data and pull it right in. So especially if you're starting a project, that could be an excellent way to get a kickstart on your surroundings.
Nice.
That's interesting.
And I just wanted to throw in one more plug for please fill out the sign-in sheet. I think there may be one or two of you who haven't. So that is in the chat for our Google sign-in sheet for the Cville rug. And then the second one is just if you want to get AIA learning units, the Central Virginia AIA, which is a sponsor for our CEUs, they have a separate form to fill out for your AIA number. So if anybody doesn't have those links, say so in the chat and I will repost them again.
There have been a lot of questions about if this recording will be available after. We kind of mentioned earlier, if you joined late in the game, that we lost our YouTube channel, but we're going to relaunch it. And this recording will be there, so you'll always have access to that free video if you wanted to share with any other people who couldn't make it tonight.
And also John is asking about the slide deck. Would you also be willing to share that? Or I could send it out with the follow-up email?
This presentation was totally tailored for this and this only, so I'm happy to send out this slide deck, no problem. We can, if you use that sign-in sheet on Google, we can send out a mass email that includes the slides for you guys to reference later.
If you want to send it to me, Sal, I can just include it in the follow-up email that I will send with the link to the survey and also the link to our new YouTube channel once I get it set up. And then I can also include the slide deck from the presentation.
Do we have a spot on our meetup site for uploading files like that?
I think we do.
Might.
It's just an option.
Do you want to explore that? I'm going to delegate the task to you, Robert.
That's what I get for opening my mouth.
Right. Oh, we did finish with perfect timing. Right at 7 o'clock.
Sorry.
Well, I just want
to thank everyone for attending. Much appreciated, and you'll be hearing from us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Sal.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so